Gunnery Sergeant Jessica Ghost Mitchell was adjusting her scope on a frozen rooftop in eastern Ukraine when she received the encrypted message that would turn her into Russia's most feared nightmare. Authorization. Omega granted prosecute all targets on the list. And as she looked at the 50 names of Russian commanders who'd orchestrated the massacre of 400 Ukrainian civilians, including a school full of children, she whispered into her radio, "Copy that, commencing Operation Angel," not knowing that in exactly 30 days, she would become the deadliest female sniper in modern warfare history. But the real question wasn't how many she'd kill, but whether she'd survive long enough to kill them all. The list had been compiled by CIA, MI6, and Ukrainian intelligence over 6 months, each name representing a war criminal who'd ordered executions, authorized chemical weapons, or commanded rape squads. And Jessica had been specifically chosen, not just for her marksmanship -312 confirmed kills in Iraq and Afghanistan, but for her psychological profile that showed zero hesitation in eliminating targets who hurt children, a trait that made her perfect for this mission. Her hide was a destroyed apartment building in Mariupol overlooking a sector where Russian commanders regularly met, and she'd been living there for 2 weeks already, subsisting on MREs, melting snow for water, defecating in bags she'd burn. At night, becoming part of the building itself, invisible, patient, deadly, waiting for the first target on her list, Colonel Viktor Petrov, nicknamed the Butcher for his treatment of prisoners. ***, if you think snipers just pull triggers, you don't understand the psychology of becoming death incarnate. ***, her rifle was a custom-built .338 Lapua Magnum with a suppressor that couldn't eliminate the sound but could confuse its origin, and she'd already mapped 17 different shooting positions, 23 escape routes, and 41 likely counter-sniper positions, because this wasn't going to be a single-shot mission but a month-long campaign of psychological warfare that would make Russian officers afraid to show their faces. The first kill came at dawn on day 3. Colonel Petrov stepping out of his command vehicle to smoke a cigarette, a habit Jessica had observed for 5 days, and her shot took him through the temple at 1,847 meters. The bullet arriving before the sound, his body dropping while his cigarette still burned, and she was already moving to her second position before his security detail realized what had happened. Her spotter, Corporal Tommy Chen, was positioned to buildings away with thermal imaging and wind readings. Their communication reduced to clicks and breathing patterns they'd developed over 3 deployments together, a partnership where words were unnecessary because they thought as one organism with 2 sets of eyes. And Tommy whispered, "Beautiful shot, Ghost, but they're going crazy down there." As Russian soldiers fired randomly into buildings, not knowing where death had come from, the psychological impact was immediate. Petrov had been considered untouchable, protected by the best security in the Russian army, and his death inside his own perimeter sent a message that nowhere was safe, that death could come from anywhere, at any time. And Jessica left her calling card, a playing card with an angel on it, placed where the next patrol would find it, letting them know this wasn't random but targeted. By day 5, she'd eliminated 3 more commanders, each shot more impossible than the last, one through a moving vehicle's window at 2,100 meters, another while he was surrounded by 20 bodyguards, the third while he was inside a building, shot through a 2-inch gap in blast curtains, and the Russian forces were in full panic, calling in counter-sniper teams from Moscow, not knowing they were hunting a ghost who'd already moved. Share this story to understand that one skilled warrior can paralyze an entire army with fear. The Russian response was predictable but ineffective. They bombed buildings randomly, sent patrols everywhere, but Jessica had studied their tactics in Syria, knew their patterns, and was always where they weren't looking, because she understood that the best camouflage wasn't visual but psychological, being where the enemy's mind couldn't conceive you'd be. By day 10, Jessica had killed 12 commanders and the Russians had changed their entire operational pattern. Officers refusing to leave bunkers, meetings conducted underground, but Jessica adapted, using a technique she'd perfected in shooting through walls with armor-piercing rounds, calculating bullet drop through concrete, eliminating targets who thought they were safe inside buildings, turning every structure into a potential kill zone. The most difficult shot came on day 12. General Dmitry Volkov, architect of the civilian massacres, surrounded by 40 bodyguards in a convoy of armored vehicles. But Jessica had anticipated this, planting an IED not to kill but to stop the convoy at a precise location where she had a clear shot for exactly 3 seconds, and in those 3 seconds, She put a round through the 2-inch armored glass of his vehicle, through his body armor's arm gap, into his heart. Tommy's role became crucial as Russian counter-snipers flooded the area. His job to identify threats while Jessica focused on targets, and twice he saved her life by calling out enemy snipers, drawing beads on her position, allowing her to displace, seconds before bullets shattered windows where she'd been. Their partnership, a dance of death where one mistake meant both would die. Her physical condition was deteriorating, eating once a day, sleeping 2 hours at a time, the constant adrenaline wearing her body down. But her mind remained sharp, focused by thoughts of the schoolchildren the Russians had killed, their faces appearing in her scope's crosshairs overlaid on every target, giving moral clarity to each kill. Comment below if you believe one person's skill can change the course of a war. The 20th kill was Personal Colonel Alexei Fedorov, who'd ordered the execution of captured female Ukrainian soldiers after sexually assaulting them, and Jessica didn't go for a clean headshot but put the round through his pelvis, letting him bleed out slowly while his men watched helplessly, afraid to help because helping meant exposing themselves to the invisible death that had taken 20 of their commanders. The Russian military's response by day 15 was unprecedented. They offered a $10 million bounty for the sniper. They'd dubbed the Angel of Death, not knowing it was a woman, assuming no female could be this lethal, and they brought in their best counter-sniper team from the Spetsnaz, led by Major Ivan Volkov, younger brother of the general Jessica had killed 3 days earlier, making this personal on both sides. The hunt became a deadly game of chess, Ivan using his brother's death as motivation, while Jessica used the murdered children as hers, and they danced around each other for 3 days, each sensing the other's presence but unable to get a clear shot, until Jessica did something unexpected. She revealed her position deliberately, drawing Ivan's fire, then used his muzzle flash to place a round through his scope and into his eye, a shot she'd practiced 1,000 times but never executed in combat until now. Tommy was wounded on day 18, shrapnel from a Russian mortar cutting his shoulder, but he refused evacuation, saying, "Ghost, we've got 32 more targets in 12 days. I'm not leaving you alone," and Jessica had to perform field surgery with her combat knife, extracting metal while Russian patrols searched a building next door, both of them silent despite the pain. The psychological warfare intensified as Jessica started leaving messages with her angel cards, writing the names of future targets, times of death, making Russian commanders paranoid about when their number would come up, and several actually deserted rather than face the invisible death that had taken 28 of their comrades. Every mother becomes capable of extreme violence when children are murdered. By day 20, the Russians had pulled most of their senior officers back to Russia, but Jessica pursued them across the border, violating international law but following a higher law, the law that said those who murder children forfeit their right to sanctuary. The cross-border operations were unsanctioned, officially denied by the Pentagon, but Jessica had gone rogue with CIA's unofficial blessing, hunting the remaining commanders in their own country. And her 29th kill happened at a military funeral in Rostov, ironically, the funeral of Colonel Petrov, her first target where she eliminated General Sergei Volkov, father of both brothers she'd already killed, completing the family trilogy of death. Russian state media went into overdrive, calling her a terrorist, a war criminal, but leaked videos of the massacres these commanders had ordered went viral simultaneously, showing the world that Jessica was targeting war criminals, not soldiers, executioners, not warriors, and public opinion even in Russia began to shift, with some calling her kills justice rather than murder. Tommy's infection got worse by day 2, forcing Jessica to work alone while he directed her via radio from their safe house, his fever making him delirious but his tactical mind still sharp, calling wind speeds and distances even while hallucinating, proving that Marine training went deeper than consciousness. The 40th kill almost ended her mission, a trap set by the FSB using a body double for General Kozlov, and when Jessica took the shot, counter-snipers triangulated her position, forcing her to escape through sewers while Russian special forces descended on her hide, but she'd prepared for this, leaving booby traps that killed 6 pursuers, buying time to reach her 5th safe house. Share this story to honor warriors who deliver justice when legal systems fail. Her mother, watching news reports about the Angel of Death from her home in Texas, recognized her daughter's work in the precision, the targeting of child killers. Remembering how Jessica had been unable to have children due to injuries from an IED, how she'd channeled that maternal instinct into protecting all children, becoming death to those who harmed them, Day 25 brought the most challenging target, General Boris Krukov, commander of chemical weapons deployment, hiding in a bunker in Moscow itself. And Jessica infiltrated the city using CIA assets, her blonde hair dyed black, contact lenses, changing her blue eyes brown, moving through the capital of her enemies with forged papers identifying her as a nurse, which wasn't entirely false. She'd been a combat medic before sniper school. The kill required innovation. Krukov never went outside, communicated only through secure lines, but Jessica discovered he had diabetes, required insulin delivered weekly, and she intercepted a delivery, replacing the insulin with a paralytic agent that would leave him conscious but unable to move, then entered his bunker disguised as medical staff and executed him with his own sidearm, leaving her angel card on his chest. Russian intelligence was closing in, her safe houses compromised one by one, Tommy barely able to walk from infection, and Jessica made the hard choice to send him out via CIA extraction while she continued alone, knowing the last 8 targets were the most important, the commanders who'd ordered the school massacre, the ones she'd saved for last because they deserved special attention. Number 43 died in his mistress's bed. Jessica, having tracked his affair for days, entering through a window while they slept, executing him silently, leaving the mistress alive but traumatized, a witness to spread fear among the remaining targets that nowhere was safe, not even in the arms of lovers. Comment if you believe some crimes deserve extrajudicial execution. The Russian military was paralyzed. Officers refusing assignments to Ukraine, some faking injuries to avoid deployment, the angel of death having achieved what NATO couldn't, making Russian commanders afraid to fight. The 47th kill nearly broke her. Colonel Pavel Volkov, youngest brother of Ivan, barely 25, and through her scope Jessica saw not a war criminal but a kid, someone who looked like the Marines she'd trained. But then she remembered, he'd personally executed 3 teenage girls in Bucha, and her finger found the trigger, sending him to join his brothers, completing her collection of the Volkov family tree. Exhaustion was taking its toll by day 28. Jessica, having lost 20 pounds, her hands shaking from malnutrition, hallucinating from sleep deprivation, but muscle memory kept her functional, the rifle, an extension of her body that worked, even when her mind flickered, and she eliminated number 48 while technically unconscious, her training so deep it operated on autopilot. The 49th target tried to surrender, General Anatoly Revin broadcasting on open channels that he wanted to defect, provide intelligence about war crimes. But Jessica knew this was a trap, the CIA confirming he was surrounded by FSB agents, waiting for her to reveal herself. So she put a round through his window from 2,400 meters, her longest shot, watching through her scope as he died, still holding his white flag. The world was watching now. Hashtag Angel of Death trending globally, some calling her a hero, others a terrorist. But Jessica didn't care about opinions, only the mission, only the list, only the faces of dead children that appeared every time she closed her eyes, driving her forward when her body wanted to quit. Share this to remind the world that justice sometimes comes from a rifle scope. The 50th name was the hardest, General Vladimir Sokolov, mastermind of the entire massacre campaign, hiding in the Kremlin itself, protected by the entire Russian state, impossible to reach. Except Jessica had one last card to play. The final kill required sacrificing her own escape. Jessica leaked her location to Russian intelligence, knowing they'd summoned Sokolov to oversee her capture personally, his ego unable to resist being present for the Angel of Death's apprehension, and she waited in a destroyed church in Belgorod surrounded by Spetsnaz, for him to arrive in his armored helicopter, her rifle aimed at the landing zone. When Sokolov stepped out, surrounded by 30 bodyguards, wearing body armor, Jessica took the shot she'd been calculating for 3 days, not at him but at the helicopter's fuel tank. The armor-piercing incendiary round igniting an explosion that killed everyone in a 50-meter radius, including Sokolov, though Jessica was far enough away to survive. Captured but alive, mission complete. Her capture made international headlines, Russia demanding she stand trial for war crimes while Ukraine called for her release as a hero, and the diplomatic standoff lasted 3 days before a prisoner exchange was arranged. Jessica for 20 Russian pilots, though Russia didn't know the pilots had been turned by CIA, making the trade a double victory. Tommy was waiting when she returned to Ramstein Air Base in Germany, his infection treated, his eyes proud but concerned as he saw what the mission had cost her, the 1,000-yard stare, the tremor in her hands, the way she flinched at sudden movements, the price of becoming death for 30 days. Every warrior who takes life to save life pays a price in their soul. The debrief revealed the mission's impact: Russian command structure in chaos, officers refusing Ukraine assignments, morale destroyed, the invasion stalling, all because one woman with a rifle had made them afraid, proved that war crimes had consequences, that someone was keeping score. The psychological evaluation at Bethesda Naval Hospital diagnosed Jessica with complex PTSD, not from the killing but from the isolation, the constant vigilance, the weight of being judge, jury, and executioner, and she spent 6 months in treatment, learning to be human again after being death, though she kept the angel cards, framed now, reminders of justice delivered. Her testimony to Congress was classified but powerful, describing not the kills but the crimes that necessitated them. The children's bodies she'd seen in intelligence photos, the rape victims' testimonies she'd read, the chemical weapon victims she'd studied, making clear that every shot had been justified by crimes against humanity that the world had failed to prevent legally. The Marine Corps didn't know what to do with her. She'd violated orders, international law, rules of engagement, but she'd also achieved more strategically than entire battalions, saved more lives through targeted killing than mass combat could have, so they quietly retired her with full honors. Medals they couldn't publicly award, a pension that acknowledged service they couldn't officially recognize. Jessica returned to Texas, to her family's ranch, where she tried to readjust to civilian life, but she'd wake at night thinking she was still in Ukraine, reaching for a rifle that wasn't there, checking windows for counter-snipers who existed only in memory, and her mother would hold her, this woman who'd killed 50 men, while she cried for the children she couldn't save. Comment below if you believe Jessica Mitchell is a hero or a criminal. The Russians put a permanent bounty on her head, $50 million for anyone who killed the angel of death. But Jessica lived openly, almost hoping someone would try, give her reason to pick up a rifle again, because part of her missed the clarity of the scope, the simplicity of the mission, the purity of purpose. 5 years later, Jessica Mitchell runs a training facility for female military and law enforcement snipers, teaching not just marksmanship but the psychology of killing, the preparation for taking life, the recovery from becoming death, lessons learned in Ukrainian snow and paid for in Russian blood. Her students don't know the full story, the classified details, but they sense something in her teaching. The way she describes wind patterns like memories, the way she demonstrates breathing techniques with the rhythm of someone who's used them to stay alive, the way she looks through scopes like she's seeing ghosts. The memorial wall in her facility has 51 photographs, not of the commanders she killed but of the Ukrainian children they murdered. Because as she tells her students, every shot must have a purpose beyond killing, must serve something greater than death, must protect those who can't protect themselves. Or you're not a warrior, you're just a killer. Tommy visits monthly, still her spotter in a way, watching for signs of the darkness returning. The isolation that made her so effective in Ukraine but could destroy her in Texas, and together they've found peace in training the next generation, teaching them to be better than they were, more precise, more human. The impact of her mission continues. Russian commanders still refuse certain assignments, still check for angel cards, still dream of the invisible death that took 50 of their colleagues in 30 days. And military historians study her campaign as the most successful targeted killing operation in modern warfare, though officially it never happened. The final truth of Jessica Mitchell's story isn't about the killing but about the cost of justice. The price one woman paid to balance scales that international law couldn't touch. Becoming a monster to stop monsters, becoming death to prevent death, sacrificing her soul to save bodies, and living now with the knowledge that she was capable of things that human beings shouldn't be capable of, but that the world sometimes requires. Her rifle remains in her safe, cleaned, oiled, zeroed, because Jessica knows that evil doesn't retire, that somewhere children are being murdered. And if the call comes again, if another list arrives, if justice needs a sniper rather than a court, she answered, because that's who she is, not just a Marine, not just a sniper, not just a woman, but an angel of death who brings justice from beyond the range of law. The ghost who made 50 war criminals pay for their crimes. The mother who couldn't have children but protected all children with a rifle and the will to use it.